He was involved in an altercation with Mr. Lee Kenneth, ID number 2012.
The question is, do you want PC protected, yes or no?
No.
Okay.
When you look at King Von's mugshots, you see chapters of his life written in Cook County records and Fulton County courtrooms. From his teenage years in juvenile detention all the way to Fulton County with Lil Durk by his side, every picture carried a story.
So you was in jail for 2 murders?
Yeah, 1 murder and 2 attempts. I just beat.
How you beat that?
And even inside those walls, the cameras never stopped rolling.
How'd you get out of your cuffs? How'd you get out of your cuffs? You don't want to. How'd you get out of your cuffs?
Thought I was still in there.
You thought you were still in them? Are you double jointed? I'm just asking.
But what is the story behind every change, cell block, and scar King Von got? Let's talk about it. King Von's early run-ins. Long before Crazy Story or before anybody outside of O Block even knew his name, Von's life had already been shaped inside correctional walls. His early years were a revolving door of arrests, detentions, and stints in juvenile facilities that hardened him, but also forced him to grow in ways most people don't expect. At 16, Von's serious run-in with the law came in August of 2010. He was still a teenager from Parkway Gardens, already caught up in the streets, when police arrested him on charges of armed robbery and carjacking at gunpoint. These were heavy charges, the kind that could have locked him away for years if he had been older. But because of his age, the system gave him something of a lifeline. The case didn't end with a long-term prison sentence. Instead, the charges were dropped and the court sent him to a military-style boot camp as part of alternative sentencing. For Von, it was the first taste of how close he could come to losing everything, and also his first experience inside a structured correctional program. The boot camp was designed to be strict, almost like basic training for young offenders. Early mornings, drills, punishments, and a routine that stripped away the freedom he had on the outside. Von himself would later talk about how young he was when jail first became part of his story, how quickly those walls became familiar. The streets had already been teaching him lessons, but now the state was too.
My first time was 3.5 years. 19 till I was 23. Now that's my 3rd time. My first time was when I was 16. For like 14 months.
Not long after, he was back inside. In late 2010, just months after the armed robbery case, Von was arrested again. This time, it wasn't a short stint. He spent about 15 months in juvenile detention, serving time straight through from December 2010 to March 2012. For most kids his age, those years are about finishing high school, thinking about what's next, and planning for adulthood. For Von, those same years were spent in a facility surrounded by other young offenders, locked into a routine that revolved around survival, discipline, and institutional order. But there's a side of this part of Von's story that complicates the narrative people often attach to him. While incarcerated as a juvenile, Von earned his GED. He worked on his education. After his release, he even attended some classes at South Suburban College. Still, the streets never stopped pulling him back. In November 2012, just months after leaving juvenile custody, Von was arrested again, this time on his first adult charge. On November 21st, police picked him up for unlawful possession of a firearm. He had just turned 18. What makes the timing even more significant is what happened right before. On Von's 18th birthday, his close friend White was murdered. That loss shook him deeply. Von would later claim that moment turned him into a demon, so when he was arrested with a gun not long after, it wasn't a surprise to anyone who knew his circumstances. That firearm charge cost him real time though. Von spent over a year in Cook County Jail, locked up from November 2012 until February 2014. Cook County was a different world compared to juvenile detention. This was adult jail, where the tension was higher, the fights were tougher, and the stakes were real.
They send you, what county was this?
What county? Cook County.
Cook County. And you said you were 19, so this is adult jail.
He was an inmate in one of the toughest jails in the country, and this is where the foundation of Von's jail persona really started to take shape. There are records of him getting into altercations inside, even being interviewed after a fight over something as small as a card game. That clip of him calmly explaining that it was over a card game while refusing protective custody or the option to press charges shows how he carried himself. No complaints, no fear, no paperwork, just another day on the tier.
Can you tell me what the fight was about? Over a card game, okay.
These early years set the tone for how he would be viewed later. For Von, incarceration wasn't just an interruption of life, it was life. And that made every mugshot after this point not just a snapshot of a moment, but a part of an ongoing story that started when he was barely old enough to drive, the 2014 attempted murder charge. On May 29, 2014, a quiet Englewood block turned into a crime scene that would change King Von's life forever. That evening, a shooting on South LaSalle Street left 19-year-old Malcolm Stuckey dead and 2 others wounded. Stuckey was a college student, a basketball player, a kid who had just shown up to celebrate a birthday with friends. But when the gunfire stopped, he was the one face down on the grass, fatally shot in his work uniform. Witnesses said Von had been at that party earlier. He'd spotted rivals, left the house, and promised he'd be back. He warned a guest to get the kids inside. Not long after, he returned with Michael Wade, another black disciple. Prosecutors later said Von chased his rivals down the block, firing a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, a gun that made its way to Chicago through Mississippi's loose firearm pipeline. When it was over, Stuckey was gone, and 2 other men were seriously wounded. 2 months later, on July 24, 2014, police arrested King Von. He was charged with first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder.
So you was in jail for 2 murders?
Yeah, 1 murder and 2 attempts. I just beat.
How you beat that?
The mugshot taken that day shows him at 19. No fame yet, just another young man booked into the system. But this was murder, and the Cook County Jail would be his home for the next 3 years. Inside, Von carried himself in a way that drew attention. In interviews and reports, he comes off calm, almost unfazed by the weight of the charge he was facing. Body cam clips and intake records from around that period show him being processed, talking evenly with officers. In Jailhouse chatter, his name carried weight. To other inmates, Von wasn't just another 19-year-old waiting for trial. He was already grandson, the young disciple carrying himself like David Barksdale's heir. That reputation mattered inside a place like Cook County, where survival depended not just on toughness, but on how you carried your name. But while Von was sitting inside, his life outside was on pause. Around that time, drill music was exploding in Chicago. Artists like Chief Keef, Lil Durk, and G Herbo were rising from the same neighborhoods, using music to tell the stories of their blocks. Von had ambitions too. He'd been rapping casually, writing, thinking about music as an outlet. But with a Stuckey case hanging over him, those dreams couldn't move forward. Still, Von's case dragged on. He spent more than 3 years inside before trial.
How long were you locked up for?
3.5.
3.5. Yeah. How old were you? I know you're young.
I got booked when I was 19.
Much of the state's case relied on his co-defendant, Michael Wade. At first, Wade agreed to testify against him, giving detectives a statement that implicated Von in the shooting. But that testimony came under pressure, with detectives pushing Wade to speak before Von got him first. Eventually, Wade backed out. Without his cooperation, the state's case fell apart. By late 2017, the trial ended with Von acquitted of all charges. He walked out of Cook County after 3.5 years inside, free but changed. Michael Wade wasn't as lucky. Tried separately, he was acquitted of murder but convicted aggravated battery for shooting one of the survivors. He was sentenced to 28 years. Von's freedom came as his co-defendant's life inside was beginning.
Was you ever scared at any point though?
Yeah,
Cause you know
the whole time.
Yeah, me scared shit.
Yeah, the whole time.
He later admitted that if he hadn't gone in on that case, he might have not taken music seriously. Jail gave him the time to think, to write, to figure out what a story could sound like on a beat. In one of his interviews, he even called jail his college. The Stuckey case was his major, and Cook County was the campus. Fights and chaos in the jailhouse. Now, the real story of Von behind those jail walls is told through shaky CCTV, muffled body cam audio, and the whispered stories of inmates who saw it firsthand. He became a presence, loud, fearless, and sometimes reckless, in a place where most people try to keep their head down. One of the earliest incidents people still talk about happened in 2016. Von and another inmate went at it so hard, the guards had to spray mace in the hallway just to stop them. The clip later surfaced, showing Von coughing and stumbling but still mouthing off like nothing scared him. When a sergeant questioned him after, Von played it cool, almost casual, saying he didn't know why they maced him and that nobody had even offered him medical care.
Why'd you get maced?
Out in the hallway.
You was in the hallway.
Out the barbershop. Hit the corner. Who makes this shit? I don't know. Somebody makes it.
They just maced you for no reason?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You got any injuries?
Yeah.
Did you receive medical attention?
No, I talked to Chances ain't getting over.
It wasn't a big show of anger, it was more the way he brushed it off, like even Cook County discipline didn't shake him. There was even a time he got into a fight with a guard in jail.
White shirt came in the room, said go to the back. I told him I need to talk to him. Instead of talking, he just pushed me, got to punch me. Grabbed him by my hair, slammed on the toilet.
Inmate accounts from that year described Von as restless and always watching the floor. A former cellmate later said he noticed how Von studied the tier, almost like a general sizing up the battlefield. He stayed alert, pacing, waiting for something to happen, and in Cook County, something always happened. Then there was the 2017 fight with 051 Freaky, a rival linked to Young Money. This one is infamous because the cameras caught it. Von noticed a tattoo on Freaky's body that mocked L.A. Capone, an OTF affiliate murdered in 2013. For Von, that wasn't just a mark of disrespect, it was a challenge. Reports say he managed to slip his restraints with the help of another inmate and went straight at Freaky, swinging until guards swarmed the room. The footage spread, cementing him as someone who wouldn't let a slight pass. What made this more than just another jail fight was how it tied back to the streets. The same conflicts that defined Englewood led into the tiers of Cook County, and Von never separated the two. Another Cook County file mentions Von by name in connection with what officers called a planned disturbance in his unit. While details were vague, it suggested he was pulling strings even when he wasn't the one throwing the first punch. Fellow inmates recalled him being respected because he wasn't afraid to lead from the front. If Von called something out, he backed it up. At one point, body cam footage shows him telling officers he was gay, asking for protective custody and a transfer.
So because of your sexual orientation, you're requesting protective custody, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Fans later debated what this meant, but people close to him, like Asian Doll and No Limit Cairo, suggested it was a strategic move, a ploy to manipulate the system. Inside Cook County, Von's rivals included Lil J, a well-known face from the Chicago drill scene. Sharing a tier with him was dangerous, so Von tried a tactic inmates sometimes call gay for the stay. If officials believed him, he might have been moved somewhere safer, away from the threats. Whether he actually thought it would work or not, the attempt showed another side of him inside, someone who wasn't afraid to bend the system if it gave him an edge. Still, the fights defined his time more than anything else. One clash was so bold that it happened right in front of the guards. Von and a few allies jumped an inmate in plain sight, a move that made it clear he wasn't playing the same survival game as everyone else.
Do you want to press charge? Okay, have you seen medical? I didn't hear you. All right.
He wasn't waiting for safe moments or hiding grudges. If he felt disrespected, he moved immediately, no matter who was watching. Around the same time, another story spread through Cook County's tiers, one that's still debated today. On April 15, 2017, there was a fire inside the jail. Smoke filled one of the units, alarms blared, and rumors flew. In the weeks that followed, many people claimed Von had been the one who started it. The story fits his growing reputation as a disruptor, someone who brought chaos wherever he went. But when the incident reports surfaced, they told a different story. The official culprit wasn't Von, it was another inmate, Raymond Pendleton, who set the fire. Von's name got attached to it anyway, and years later, people still repeat the version where he tried to burn down the jail. Whether he encouraged it, helped it along, or just got caught up in the smoke will probably never be proven. What matters is that the legend stuck. But with that weight came consequences. Guards saw him as unpredictable. Other inmates measured themselves against him. He wasn't just Von from O Block anymore. Inside Cook County, he was someone people feared, tested, or tried to align with. Drugs reportedly played a role too, fueling fights and paranoia and making his behavior even harder to predict. By 2017, Von had become a marked figure inside. His name was in incident reports, his fights were on tape, and his stories passed from tier to tier like folklore. Where other Chicago rappers locked up tried to lay low, Von leaned into the chaos. It was risky, but it's also why his name grew louder during those 3 years behind bars. The Durk and Von Case. By 2019, King Von had already built a reputation that straddled two worlds, Chicago's O-Block street politics and his budding music career. But when his mugshot out of Atlanta surfaced, the stakes looked very different from the fights and firearm cases of his earlier years. This time, Von's face was tied to a case that could have ended everything just as it was beginning. The Atlanta arrest alongside Lil Durk placed him under a national spotlight, and for the first time, his legal troubles were being broadcast outside Chicago. The story began in the early morning hours of February 5, 2019, in the parking lot of the Varsity, a landmark restaurant in Midtown Atlanta. Von, Durk, and their associate Bezu crossed paths with Alexander Weatherspoon, a 23-year-old with a reputation in Chicago as a scammer and Vice Lord affiliate. What started as words in a parking lot escalated within minutes into gunfire, 13 shots in total, the sound bouncing across a crowded street just before dawn. Weatherspoon was struck in the femoral artery, collapsing near a cigar lounge while bystanders scrambled for cover.
Lil Durk, whose real name is Durk Derek Banks, and his co-defendant Devontae Bennett were seen on camera involved in shooting Alexander Witherspoon, a person police say they knew.
Police recovered a 9mm handgun and shell casings from both a pistol and a rifle. At first, the case went quiet, but in May 2019, things changed dramatically. Von was tackled and arrested in Chicago on a fugitive warrant tied to the shooting. Days later, Bezu was picked up too, and by the end of that month, Atlanta police officially named Lil Durk as the final suspect, charging him with multiple felonies, including attempted murder. The timing was almost surreal. Durk responded by releasing a track called Turn Myself In, where he rapped about the weight of his situation, while Von sat in custody with his own future hanging in the balance. When Von was booked into Fulton County Jail, the difference from his Chicago lockups was striking. Here, he wasn't just another neighborhood kid in a holding cell. He was a rising rap star with national eyes on him. Fulton's records show him to not bond at first, grouped in with Durk as prosecutors painted the case as gang-motivated. A Chicago police captain even flew down to Atlanta to testify that both men were documented black disciples. Prosecutors leaned on surveillance footage, claiming it showed Durk firing from the window of a Jeep with 300 plastered on the side, while witness testimony tied Von to the chaos.
She put a Chicago detective on the stand to testify that Banks and Bennett are members of Chicago gangs.
Inside Fulton, Von reportedly stayed quiet, sticking to his pattern of invoking his right to remain silent, just as he had done in Chicago. But the charges were heavier this time: criminal attempt to commit murder, aggravated assault, participation in gang activity, and possession of a firearm during a felony. If convicted, Von was looking at decades. For a young man who had just signed to Durk's Only the Family label and was recording some of his breakthrough material, the timing couldn't have been worse. Court hearings stretched through that summer, with detectives presenting evidence piece by piece. One female witness claimed she saw Durk fire a weapon during the confrontation, though even prosecutors admitted the victim, Weatherspoon, had a gun of his own and may have fired first. That uncertainty, plus Von's refusal to cooperate in interviews, left the case murky. Still, both men sat inside Fulton as their bond decisions were delayed, the weight of possible prison time clashing with the buzz of their rising careers. By late June, the tide shifted. Judge Kevin Farmer granted Durk a $250,000 bond, citing his decision to turn himself in. Von followed with a $300,000 bond. The conditions were strict: ankle monitors, curfews, no weapons, and orders to stay far away from the victim.
And granted him a $250,000 bond. Lil Durk was in front of the judge today, and the rapper is facing attempted murder. Now,
another condition: Durk and Von couldn't have direct contact, a blow to the duo's chemistry just as they were beginning to record together. Von was effectively on house arrest, monitored closely while still trying to present himself as a legitimate artist on the rise. The situation hung over him for the rest of his short life. For fans, this mugshot became one of the most iconic, not just because of the case itself, but because it marked the moment Von was officially too big to avoid national scrutiny. Every move he made afterward, from handing out money on O-Block to starting his own label, was viewed through the lens of someone already facing the possibility of decades behind bars. The legal shadow didn't lift until October 2022, nearly 2 years after Von's death. Fulton County prosecutors dismissed the charges against Durk, citing lack of evidence strong enough to secure a conviction. They were blunt in saying that Von, had he lived, would have been indicted alongside him. For some, that sounded like a quiet way of shifting the blame onto someone who could no longer defend himself. For others, it was proof of how entangled Von really was in both his street ties and his music career.